4 aircraft, 7 bunker buster bombs, one night. And in just a few hours, while most of the world was asleep, the United States appears to have done something Iran spent 4 decades insisting could never happen. Not a symbolic strike, not a warning message, not a limited show of force, a coordinated deep penetration operation aimed straight at the core of Iran's underground missile infrastructure, the hidden military architecture Tehran built over 40 years to survive war, absorb pressure, and outlast any conventional air campaign. This is not just rumor. It is not just spin. Satellite imagery has pointed to it. CENTCOM-linked reporting has reinforced it. Even regional seismic readings appear to tell a story the Iranian government can no longer fully bury beneath censorship, propaganda, or silence. Welcome back to BCC News MV. If you have been following our coverage of the U.S.-Iran war, Operation Epic Fury, Iran missile-based strikes, Strait of Hormuz crisis, and the collapse of Tehran's underground deterrent, then you already know something about this channel. We do not stop at headlines. We go beneath them. We go into the operational logic, the military strategy, the intelligence architecture, and the geopolitical consequences that most outlets rush past. And today we are going deep into the mountains of Yazd and Isfahan, Anchu and Daninchi. Deep into the hidden logic behind America's most consequential bunker buster strike campaign in years. And deep into what this operation means not just for Iran, not just for Washington, but for every military power on Earth now watching this unfold in real time. So before we go any further, if you are new to Bupping Chiu and Kyungstein Dying Chiu BCC News, take 5 seconds right now, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us until the end, because what you are about to hear may reshape the way the world thinks about underground missile cities, hardened military tunnels, nuclear deterrence, and 21st century air power itself. To understand the full weight of what happened on the night of Daim's March 27, 2026, you first have to understand the doctrine Iran has been building for 40 years. Iran does not possess a world-class air force in the way the United States does. It cannot dominate oceans. It cannot project conventional power globally. That was never the center of its long-term military design. Instead, Tehran built something different, something asymmetric, something hardened, something meant to survive. A subterranean missile empire, a vast network of tunnel complexes drilled deep into mountains across provinces like Tehran, Isfahan, and Yazd. Reinforced underground factories, hidden storage corridors, missile assembly lines buried under rock and concrete. Underground launch facilities and support chambers designed to survive wave after wave of conventional strikes. The core logic behind this architecture was simple. You can bomb the surface, you can destroy roads, you can strike visible bases, but you cannot reach us down here. And even if you damage one site, we will repair it, rebuild it, reopen it, resume production. Resume deterrence, resume pressure. For years, that doctrine seemed credible. It shaped Iran's missile strategy. It shaped regional deterrence. It shaped the calculations of every military planner looking at Iran from Washington, Riyadh, Tel Aviv, or beyond. But that doctrine rested on one dangerous assumption. It assumed the enemy would keep fighting by the old rules. On the night of March 27th, the United States appears to have stopped playing by the old rules altogether. According to reports, analysis, and imagery later reviewed by multiple independent observers, 4 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers lifted off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri under cover of darkness. These were not ordinary sorties. These were deep strike strategic bombing missions designed for one purpose: to break the core links of Iran's underground missile production chain in a single coordinated wave. Each aircraft reportedly carried one of the most powerful conventional bunker-busting weapons in the American arsenal, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator. This is not a standard bomb. This is a 30,000-pound deep penetration weapon built specifically to attack hardened underground targets, nuclear infrastructure, buried command nodes, fortified tunnel networks, and mountain-protected military sites thought to be safe from ordinary air attack. The B-2 is uniquely built for this kind of mission. It can fly intercontinental distances. It can remain airborne for more than 30 hours with refueling support. Its stealth profile makes detection extraordinarily difficult. And when paired with long-range aerial refueling, precision intelligence, and deep penetration ordnance, it becomes not just a bomber, but they can but a strategic scalpel. Iran appears to have never seen them coming. And the targets that night were not selected at random. They were chosen with extraordinary precision, reportedly the product of months of satellite surveillance, signals intelligence, target development, and joint analytical work. 4 targets, 4 nodes, do. 4 links in a single military production chain. And the plan appears to have been brutally simple. Break all 4 at once. Do not allow redundancy. Do not allow substitution. Do not allow recovery through alternate routing. Do not let one surviving site compensate for the destruction of another. Hit the chain all at once and the chain stops functioning. The first strike reportedly hit a deeply buried facility in the Kairwang, Shanqiu, and Tehran region. A site assessed to play a critical role in the final assembly of Iran's ballistic missile bodies. This was reportedly one of the last major stages in the serial production cycle for variants in the Shahab and Sejil family. Not a symbolic storage depot, not an empty bunker. A live industrial military node tied directly to missile output. Reports indicate the GBU-57 penetrated deep into the mountain structure through layered rock and reinforced concrete before detonating underground. What followed, according to the available descriptions, was not just blast damage, but structural collapse. Support systems failed. Ventilation shafts were crushed or sealed. The electrical infrastructure was knocked offline. Internal evacuation likely became chaotic, dangerous, and in some sectors, impossible. Years of investment, billions in hardened infrastructure, reduced to buried wreckage in moments. But a missile body without propulsion is dead metal, which is why the second strike mattered just as much. The second target reportedly lay in Etstari im Insande and the Isfahan province, home to one of the most strategically important engine testing and propulsion development complexes in Iran's missile program. This was not merely a warehouse. This was the beating heart of the propulsion chain. The place where missile engines were tested, calibrated, refined, and integrated into operational production systems. According to reports, the bunker buster detonated deep enough to obliterate high-value internal systems. Test chambers were destroyed. Ventilation and environmental support systems were compromised. Fires spread through the facility. Sensitive calibration instruments, the kind of machinery that cannot simply be replaced in a week or two, were reportedly damaged beyond realistic near-term recovery. That matters enormously, because underground military production is not just about concrete and tunnels. It is about precision equipment, specialized tolerances, industrial sequencing, industry, human expertise, stability, power, cooling, air circulation, safety systems. Destroy those and the tunnel is no longer a productive military asset. It becomes an expensive cave. That was 2 links broken. Then came the third strike and bade them downs for ye stings sawan the down nandar ye zawan den danes for fur trees, and by many assessments the deepest and most destructive of the night. This target lay in the eyes and the Fanchi Sa Fi and Sai CC, the Di region, reportedly tied to the processing and integration of cruise missile components. Reports suggest this strike penetrated deeper than any other that night. And if the reporting is accurate, the result was catastrophic. A thermobaric-style secondary effect may have intensified internal destruction by igniting oxygen-rich internal systems, creating a chain reaction that destroyed both production areas and adjacent storage sections. The implications extend far beyond Iran's own missile stockpile. Because if this site was indeed tied to the production stream supplying long-range or precision-guided cruise munitions for Tehran's wider proxy network, then the consequences ripple outward across the map, from from the Red Sea to Lebanon. That means Hezbollah. That means Houthi-linked capabilities. That means the wider asymmetric missile architecture Iran has spent years using to pressure shipping lanes, regional bases, civilian infrastructure, and strategic rivals without relying solely on direct state-to-state war. If that production source was severed, then the damage was not just domestic. It was regional. And then came the fourth strike, arguably the most geopolitically explosive target of the entire operation. Near the Kiabrichi Dengbi in Merfor, Strait of Hormuz, and Chior in and Dao, Shir Salm of Al-Din-Dalwan on Iran's coast sat an underground storage complex reportedly housing a major concentration of Dao, Shiu, anti-ship ballistic missiles, and this was not just another missile bunker. This was leverage over the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz carries a massive share of the world's seaborne oil flow. Iran's long-standing ability to threaten tankers, shipping corridors, and naval movement through Hormuz has been one of its greatest strategic pressure tools. Even the possibility of closing or heavily disrupting the strait has given Tehran leverage far beyond what its conventional military size alone would suggest. But according to reports, the strike on this underground depot triggered secondary detonations so severe that much of the stored anti-ship missile inventory may have destroyed itself in sequence. Fire, pressure, sympathetic explosion. Internal chain reaction detonations in Kenya. If accurate, that means one of Iran's most important tools of global economic coercion was not merely damaged, that Pershing done so was not but functionally gutted. And that changes everything. Because once the credibility of Hormuz closure begins to collapse, Iran loses one of the most powerful asymmetric threats it has long used to hold global markets hostage. So look at the pattern here. Final missile assembly in the Tehran region, shattered. Propulsion and engine testing in Isfahan, crippled. Cruise missile component production in Yazd, devastated. Hormuz anti-ship storage capability detonated. Ordnet. 4 targets. 4 links. One night. That is not a raid. That is not a warning strike. That is a strategic attempt to strangle missile production at the systems level. And this is where the data becomes even more striking. According to military reporting and analysis tied to battlefield assessments, Iran's ballistic missile launch rate appears to have dropped dramatically from the opening phase of the war. Drone launch rates reportedly collapsed as well. Analysts reviewing these numbers have described the decline not as temporary disruption, but as something closer to strategic strangulation. And that phrase matters, because wars are not won only by destroying what exists today. They are won by destroying the enemy's ability to rebuild tomorrow. Now let's talk about what made this operation possible, because the physical destruction is only half the story. The logistical achievement behind it is staggering. These B-2 bombers did not launch from some nearby forward operating base. They reportedly flew from Missouri. That means transoceanic mission planning, stealth routing, timing, tanker coordination, command synchronization, threat management, and aerial refueling on a scale few countries on Earth could even attempt. This is what separates global power projection from regional military action. The aircraft themselves matter, but so does the invisible architecture around them. KC-135 tankers, KC-46 refueling assets, airborne mission persistence, command and control, ESR integration, satellite targeting, deception, timing. It is one thing to own a stealth bomber. It is another thing entirely to send it across the world on a 30-plus-hour strike cycle and deliver coordinated simultaneous bunker buster attacks against multiple hardened targets in hostile airspace. Very few militaries can do that. And it was not just the B-2 fleet involved in the wider campaign. Broader reporting suggests the strike environment around Iran had already been shaped by a far larger coalition air architecture: bombers, fighters, refueling bridges, ISR platforms, and maritime support assets all operating in sync. By the time these March 27 strikes took place, Iran's air defenses appear to have already been degraded enough that the coalition was beginning to transition toward more dynamic targeting. That is a major point, because when an air campaign no longer needs to rely only on standoff weapons, when non-stealth bombers begin appearing more openly, when mobile targets are hunted inside battle space rather than just fixed positions at range, that tells you air superiority is no longer theoretical. It is operational. And once that happens, everything changes for the defender, because then the question is no longer, can they hit us? The question becomes, what can we still protect? So, what and that takes us to the maritime dimension, because the destruction of the Hormuz missile depot was only one part of the broader effort to dismantle Iran's coastal deterrent. Iran's naval strategy in the Gulf has long been built around asymmetry. Fast attack boats, patrol vessels, swarm tactics, coastal strike systems, anti-ship missile launchers, and the constant threat of harassment, disruption, or escalation in confined waters. But on the same night, or within the same operational window, these maritime assets appear to have been systematically hit as well. Fast attack craft, coastal defense platforms, patrol vessels, support nodes, precision-guided munitions reportedly struck them in sequence, reducing Iran's ability not just to fire, but to maneuver, contest, or even confidently operate in its own coastal zone. That matters because sea denial is not only about sinking ships, it is about presence, confidence, mobility, harassment, escalation credibility. Once Iranian vessels become trapped by the threat of coalition air power the moment they leave port, the coastal strategy begins to collapse inward. The map may not change, but the usable battle space shrinks dramatically. That is strategic paralysis, and the operation appears to have aimed for that deliberately. Now here is where things become even more ruthless from a military planning perspective. Because destruction was never the only goal. The real objective was to break Iran's ability to recover. Iran's underground doctrine always assumed that even if a site took damage, the regime could clear rubble, move engineering teams in, reopen access roads, bring in heavy machinery, and resume function over time. So Operation Epic Fury reportedly targeted that logic too. At sites already damaged earlier in the campaign, Iranian efforts to repair and reconstitute infrastructure were reportedly hit by follow-on drone strikes and precision attacks. Bulldozers, excavators, repair convoys, construction logistics, access roads, the equipment needed to restore survivability itself became a target set. That is not ordinary battlefield destruction. That is denial of reconstitution. And psychologically, it sends a devastating message. Not just, we can hit you. That's, but we can hit you, and then we can hit the people trying to fix what we hit. So the there is no reset button in that scenario. No stable recovery window. No safe engineering phase. That destroys more than facilities. It destroys confidence. And confidence is everything in deterrence. For decades, the Iranian state told its military elites and its public that its underground tunnel empire was proof of strategic invincibility. The mountains would protect them. The bunkers would shield them. The buried arsenal would endure. But when underground sites collapse, when seismic shocks ripple outward, when facilities once advertised as untouchable are breached, flooded with pressure, or buried in internal destruction, then the myth itself begins to crack. That is the deeper psychological dimension of this operation. The loss is not only missiles, not only machines, not only depots. The loss is belief. Belief that the bunkers are safe. Belief that the command structure is protected. Belief that underground depth still guarantees survival. And once that belief begins to erode inside a security state, the damage extends well beyond the battlefield. Now we have to talk about the nuclear dimension, because this is where the strategic message grows even larger. Operation Epic Fury appears not to have focused solely on missile infrastructure. It also signaled that the coalition can reach and disrupt multiple stages of the nuclear fuel cycle without necessarily triggering an environmental catastrophe. That distinction is crucial, because for years, one of the arguments surrounding any strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure was that it could create uncontrollable regional fallout, physically, politically, or environmentally. But if the reports are accurate, the strikes were calibrated to target support systems, processing nodes, precursor stages, or associated infrastructure in a way that interrupted capability while avoiding reactor core disaster. That sends a message not just to Tehran, but to every state studying hardened nuclear development under military pressure. The message is this: we can reach your program. We can sever it at multiple points. We can do it with precision. And we can do it without automatically causing the catastrophe you assumed would deter us. That is an extraordinary shift in strategic signaling. And listen to the language that has surrounded this campaign. The stated objective has not sounded like a limited punitive action. It has sounded like a deliberate effort to permanently reduce Iran's ability to project power through missiles, drones, naval coercion, proxy support, and long-term nuclear advancement. This is why the operational timeline matters, because the apparent strategy was never simply endless bombing. It was compressed pressure, 4 to 6 weeks of intensified military degradation, then forced negotiations from a position of severe Iranian weakness, not regime change by occupation, not indefinite war by drift, but concentrated strategic dismantling designed to produce leverage. And now, as of April 8, 2026, that strategy appears to have entered a new phase, a temporary ceasefire. Negotiations in Islamabad, both sides claiming victory, both sides shaping narratives for domestic audiences. And this is where careful analysis matters more than ever. Because in post-conflict diplomacy, public claims and battlefield reality rarely look the same. Iran says it forced America to negotiate. Washington says military pressure created the opening. Iran lays out major demands. The United States emphasizes strength, leverage, and results. But beneath all the messaging, one reality stands out. Iran's military infrastructure today appears far weaker than it was before Operation Epic Fury began. The missile production chain appears damaged at multiple levels. The naval deterrent appears reduced. The underground reconstitution model appears under direct assault. And the broader strategic myth of bunker invulnerability has taken one of the hardest blows in its history. And that leads to perhaps the biggest military implication of all. Because this operation is not just about Iran, it is about doctrine. For years, underground fortification was treated almost like a solved defensive equation. Dig deep enough, bury enough, harden enough, conceal enough, and eventually conventional air power reaches its limit. That assumption may now need to be rethought, not because every tunnel can be destroyed, not because every bunker can be penetrated, but because the usefulness of an underground network does not depend only on the deepest chamber. It depends on the operational chain, the assembly lines, the access roads, the storage zones, the loading points, the test systems, the ventilation networks, the power supply, the input-output flow, the repair capacity, the logistics spine. Destroy those, and the deepest bunker on Earth may still survive physically while becoming strategically meaningless. And that is the lesson military planners in Beijing, Pyongyang, Moscow, and elsewhere are likely studying right now. Not just the bomb, not just the bomber, but the integration of intelligence, persistence, timing, targeting, logistics, and sequence. This is what makes the lesson of March 27th so large. The tunnel itself is no longer the whole equation. The system around the tunnel is the target. And if that system can be mapped, watched, and struck across multiple points in one synchronized operational window, then hardened underground infrastructure may no longer provide the strategic sanctuary many states assumed it did. That is a profound shift. The Strait of Hormuz has reopened. Iran's naval pressure tools appear heavily weakened. Missile production capacity has reportedly been severed across multiple critical nodes. The nuclear fuel cycle appears interrupted at more than one stage. Repair efforts have reportedly been targeted. And now a fragile diplomatic phase has begun in Islamabad. Will this ceasefire hold? That remains completely uncertain. Will negotiations produce a durable framework? No one can say yet. The gap between what Tehran is publicly demanding and what Washington is publicly willing to accept remains enormous. What Iran presents as minimum terms may in reality be an opening bargaining posture. What Washington calls success may still be far from stable peace. And that is why this story is not over, because the ceasefire window is not the conclusion. It is the test. The next chapter depends on whether battlefield reality forces political compromise or inertia keys or whether the pause merely resets the conditions for another wave of escalation. And one more point needs to be made. The aircraft that carried out those deep strikes are still there. The logistics architecture behind them still exists. The intelligence network that fed the target package is still active. And the political leadership that authorized the operation has made it clear that serious escalation remains available if diplomacy collapses. That is why what happened on one night in late March 2026 may reach far beyond this war. Because beyond the specific facilities, the specific bombers, and the specific targets, Operation Epic Fury appears to have demonstrated something larger. The era of automatic safety for hardened underground military infrastructure may be ending. The weapons exist. The intelligence exists. The refueling backbone exists. The sequencing exists. And the willingness to use all of it in one synchronized campaign has now been demonstrated. That lesson will not remain in Iran. It will travel from missile tunnels in the Middle East to submarine cave complexes in Asia, from mountain bunker doctrines to future deterrence planning across multiple continents. And if military doctrine truly begins to shift because of what happened that night, then March 27 will not just be remembered as a strike date. It will be remembered as a turning point. We will, of course, continue tracking every development in the Islamabad negotiations, the ceasefire timeline, new satellite imagery, battlefield assessments, CENTCOM updates, and the next phase of the U.S.-Iran conflict. Shafar Yuri Feina, right here on BCC News. So, if this analysis gave you the full picture, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to BCC News right now. Turn on the bell so you do not miss what comes next. Because the negotiations may be happening in public, but the real story is still unfolding in the shadows. And here at BCC News, we will be covering every major update, every military shift, and every strategic consequence step by step. Stay with BCC News, and because the next 14 days could decide everything.